Hello, this is a small bag of potatoes. The variety is Bambino. They were grown in the United Kingdom and they're price reduced. I don't know if you'll see that. 51 pence for a kilogram of naturally wonky potatoes. So what do we mean when we say wonky? Well, it tells us on the back. I'll need my glasses for this. Okay, listen up. We're working closely with our growers to reduce food waste. So our wonky fruits and vegetables might not be quite the right shape or size, but they're great quality, packed with flavour and even better value for money. Naturally wonky, naturally wonderful. Hey, how about that? Naturally wonky, naturally wonderful. Let's get a closer look at these wonky potatoes. Oh. Well, there's nothing wrong with the shape and there's nothing wrong with the size that I can see that makes these potatoes wonky. There just isn't. But look at the colour of them. They're green. Would you eat those? Supposedly full of flavour. Would you eat those? Green potatoes. Let me show you how green they are. This is a red skin. This is a white skin potato. Hey, these potatoes are green. Would you eat a green potato? Look, before you answer that, I'm going to cut you to a clip of video that I shot some time ago about green potatoes, what we should be doing with green potatoes. Watch that clip of video, then come back to me, then I'll ask you the same question. Would you eat these green potatoes? Hello. I'm going to start this video today by explaining the obvious. It's obvious to experienced gardeners, but perhaps not as obvious to beginners, and it's important that you know this. I hope you can see this. These potatoes are turning green. That's obvious, isn't it? If you can see it, it's obvious. Potatoes are turning green. But what isn't obvious is that the green part of these potatoes is toxic. It's poisonous. And what causes that? I think you probably know, don't you? It's because the potato has broke surface and become exposed to daylight, to sunlight, and that part of the potato has turned green. If you take it out, hope you can see this, that part of the potato hasn't turned green. That's the part that was still covered by soil, it was still in the dirt. It's just the top half of the potato that's turned green. So that part of the potato is the part that contains the toxins, contains the poison. But how do we know it hasn't spread from top to bottom? How do we know it hasn't gone right through the potato? If you're like me, I expect you've had these before and you've had to make a decision. Can you use them? Would you take a chance? Or do you bin them? My guess would be that if you've got lots of small ones like this, but you've also got lots of other good decent sized potatoes, you'd probably bin these. But if you're a bit desperate, you might want to cut the bottoms off, eat the bottom bit, just bin the top bit. Have you ever done that? I'm sure you have. I have. Let me show you this guy. This guy maybe take a bit more thinking about. Size of that potato. He's a big one, isn't he? You'd be disappointed when you turn him over and find out he's going green as well. You're not wanting to throw this guy away. You wanted to eat this guy, but he's got this green bit. Well, it would cut off. You could eat the bit that isn't green. Take a chance. Well, what exactly are you taking a chance with? What's likely to happen if you eat green potatoes? Well, the toxin in green potatoes is solanine. Solanine poisoning is primarily displayed by gastrointestinal and neurological disorders. Whoa! That's a mouthful. Symptoms include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, stomach cramps, burning of the throat, nightmares, headache, dizziness, itching, thyroid problems, and inflammation and pain in the joints. Wow, are you going to risk all of that just for a piece of potato? Are you going to risk that? Or are you going to be ultra safe and just throw any potato that has a little bit of green on it? Well, let me ask you a question. Do you know anybody that's eaten green potatoes, pieces of green potato? Do you know anybody that's had any of those symptoms? I mean, there are more severe cases. In severe cases, there's also hallucination, loss of sensation, paralysis, fever, jaundice, dilated pupils, hypothermia, and in worst case scenario, man, that's bad enough, but in the worst case scenario, death. Come on, death? I've never heard of anyone that's died from eating green potatoes. So what I did before I started to produce this video, I've done a little research. I needed to be a bit more up to speed on the consequences of eating green potatoes, and had anybody ever done it, and what had happened to them. So all the symptoms that I've just given you, that was straight from Wikipedia. Okay, that was straight from Wikipedia. But I also searched the internet to see if there's any recorded instances where people had actually eaten green potatoes. So I'm just going to put some text up now. I don't want to read this out to you. You'll need to read this text yourself. Form an opinion. I'll come back to you after having a cup of tea, and then we'll discuss this a little further. Okay. So, as you can see, people have suffered these symptoms. People have died through eating green potatoes. But I think it's fair to say, in every instance, there were underlying issues that caused that. If you're starving, then you'll eat anything. And you'll eat any quantity of anything. I mean, people have been known to eat leaves and bark off trees, anything that they can find. When you're starving, you'll eat it. And I suppose green potatoes, yeah, you'll eat green potatoes, won't you? And if you're starving, you'll probably eat lots of them. So eating lots of green potatoes, starting from a position where all your natural defences are low because you're starving, well, you read it, you saw what happened. But you're never going to be in that position. You're never going to be in that position, hopefully, that we're starving, that we have to eat quantities of green potatoes. This is the most we're ever going to see, I think. The most you're ever going to see. Cut these pieces off, I think. You're not going to be eating a lot, are you? This guy will go on the veg rack. The next time we have potatoes, this will be one of the first to go. That green bit comes off, we'll cook the rest. Okay, so if I stop putting videos up over the next week or two, you know I've poisoned myself by eating this potato. Wow, what do you think of that? Would you want to risk all of that for a few potatoes? I wouldn't. What did Clint Eastwood used to say? Are you feeling lucky? Are you feeling lucky? Well, if you're lucky, you'll get a nice meal of potatoes. If you're unlucky, you could get all sorts of things. You could get all sorts of things. But in fairness, I think the reason that people were made ill and some died, unfortunately, from eating green potatoes, the people themselves are in a pretty poor condition. They were starving, underlying health issues. You know, if you're a healthy, fit person, you might get away with this, and you might just get a sore tummy. But hey, as Clint would say, are you feeling lucky? Well, I'm not feeling lucky. I'm not going to eat any of these. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to grow them. These are going to become part of my collection of shop-bought potatoes that I intend growing on when spring comes round. We're still in the winter months here at Homegrown Veg. So basically what I'm doing is building up a collection of various varieties of potatoes, shop-bought potatoes, store-bought potatoes. My intention is to grow them on. My intention is to grow them on. So, let's just take a few of those off the table. How's that looking for a few seed potatoes? What do you think? So can we make them? Yeah, how's that looking? Red potatoes, white potatoes and green potatoes. Yeah, I've grown potatoes on before. Lots of different varieties from shop-bought and store-bought potatoes. I'm hoping these guys will chit up in the spring of the year, but in the meantime I'm going to keep them dry, keep them in a cold, dark place. I'm going to put them in the bottom of the fridge. I'll bring them out in spring, chit them up, and hey, away we go again. And what I like about this is an inexpensive way of doing it, and it's possibly the only way of building up a collection of different potatoes to grow on, other than buying them in much bigger quantities. And if you're like me and you're only growing in buckets and bags, then you don't want a large quantity of one variety. I don't. I want a variety of varieties. I just think it's more fun doing it that way. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this this video. This is Homegrown Veg, signing out.